In the quiet hours when darkness settles across the land like a gentle blanket, when the world seems to pause and breathe in unison with the turning of the stars, there exists a place where time moves differently, where the very air seems thick with untold stories and the whispers of countless souls who have walked these halls before. This is a place built not merely of stone and mortar, but of ambition and wonder, of curiosity, and the eternal human desire to understand the mysteries that lie beyond the veil of ordinary perception. Tonight we return to this extraordinary sanctuary of learning, this monument to knowledge that has stood for centuries, weathering storms both literal and metaphorical, a beacon for those who seek to unlock the secrets hidden within ancient texts and forgotten wisdom. The journey begins as evening descends, painting the sky in shades of deep purple and midnight blue, as if the heavens themselves are preparing a canvas for the story about to unfold. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast forest, where ancient trees rise like silent sentinels, their branches interlocking overhead to create a cathedral of leaves that filters the fading sunlight into patterns of gold and shadow. The path before you is worn smooth by countless footsteps, each one belonging to a seeker of knowledge, a student of the mysteries, someone who dared to venture beyond the comfortable boundaries of the known world. The air carries the scent of earth and moss, of distant rain and the crisp promise of autumn, and somewhere in the distance, you can hear the faint call of nocturnal creatures beginning their evening songs. This is the threshold between two worlds, the boundary where the ordinary gives way to the extraordinary, and as you take your first step forward, you feel the weight of expectation, the thrill of anticipation, knowing that what lies ahead will change you in ways both subtle and profound. As you continue along the winding path, the forest begins to thin, and through the gaps between the trees, you catch your first glimpse of the structure that has called to you across time and space. It rises from the landscape like a mountain of human achievement, its towers reaching toward the heavens as if attempting to touch the stars themselves, its walls weathered by centuries, yet standing strong and proud against the passage of time. The architecture speaks of an age when builders possessed both the skill and the vision to create something that would endure, something that would serve generations yet unborn, a testament to the belief that knowledge is the most precious treasure humanity can accumulate. The main building sprawls across the landscape, its various wings and additions telling the story of its growth over the centuries, each generation adding their own contributions to this ever-expanding repository of wisdom. Gothic spires pierce the darkening sky, their pointed tops seeming to draw down the very light of the stars, while massive windows, some illuminated from within by warm golden light, others dark and mysterious, hint at the countless rooms and chambers that lie within. The path leads you across a bridge that spans a deep ravine, and far below, you can hear the rush of water, a river that has carved its way through the bedrock over millennia, its persistent flow a reminder that even the hardest stone must eventually yield to the patient work of time. As you cross the bridge, the temperature drops slightly, and you notice how the sound of the water seems to echo off the walls of the ravine, creating a symphony of natural acoustics that fills the air with a soothing, rhythmic whisper. The bridge itself is a marvel of engineering, built from massive blocks of stone fitted together with such precision that no mortar was needed, and as your feet touch its surface, you can feel the solidity of it, the sense that this structure has carried thousands before you and will carry thousands more long after your journey is complete. The path curves upward now, climbing toward the main entrance, and with each step the building seems to grow larger, more imposing, until it fills your entire field of vision, a monument to human ambition and the insatiable desire to understand the world and the forces that govern it. The entrance is marked by two massive doors, each one carved from a single piece of ancient wood, darkened by age and weather until they are nearly black, their surfaces covered with intricate designs that seem to shift and change in the flickering light of the torches mounted on either side. The carvings depict scenes of discovery and learning, of scholars bent over manuscripts, of astronomers studying the heavens, of naturalists examining specimens collected from distant lands, of mathematicians working through complex equations that reveal the underlying patterns of reality. Above the doors, carved into the stone lintel, is a phrase in an ancient language, and though you may not understand the words, their meaning seems to resonate in your very bones, a reminder that knowledge is not merely the accumulation of facts, but the cultivation of wisdom, the development of understanding, the transformation of the self through the pursuit of truth. As you stand before these doors, you notice that they are slightly ajar, as if the building itself is inviting you inside, welcoming you to join the countless others who have sought refuge within its walls, who have dedicated their lives to the study of the mysteries that lie at the heart of existence. You place your hand against the rough wood, feeling the grain beneath your palm, sensing the accumulated energy of all those who have touched this same spot before you, and with a gentle push, the door swings open with surprising ease, revealing the entrance hall beyond. Stepping across the threshold is like passing through a portal into another world, a realm where the ordinary rules of time and space seem to bend and flex, where the air itself feels charged with possibility and potential. The entrance hall is vast, its ceiling soaring high above your head, supported by massive columns that rise like the trunks of ancient trees, their surfaces carved with spiraling patterns that seem to draw the eye upward, toward the vaulted ceiling where painted stars gleam against a background of deep blue. The floor beneath your feet is made of polished stone, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, and your own footfalls echo softly in the immense space, a small sound that nevertheless seems significant, as if the building itself is acknowledging your presence, marking your arrival in its long history. Torches and candles provide illumination, their flames dancing and flickering in invisible currents of air, casting shadows that move and shift across the walls, creating the illusion of constant motion, of life and activity even in stillness. To your left and right, corridors branch off into darkness, each one promising its own mysteries and discoveries, and directly ahead, a grand staircase rises toward the upper levels, its steps worn into gentle curves by the passage of countless feet over countless years. The walls are lined with portraits, images of those who have called this place home, who have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of knowledge, and as you look at their painted faces, you feel as though their eyes are following you, watching with a mixture of curiosity and approval, welcoming you into their fellowship. The air here carries scents that speak of age and wisdom, the smell of old paper and leather bindings, of candle wax and wood polish, of stone that has stood for centuries and absorbed the essence of all that has transpired within these walls. There is a quality to the silence here that is different from the silence of empty spaces. This is a silence filled with potential, with the anticipation of words about to be spoken, of stories about to be told, of discoveries about to be made. You move toward the grand staircase, drawn by an inexplicable pull, a sense that your destination lies somewhere above, in one of the many chambers and halls that fill the upper levels of this vast edifice. The stairs are wide enough for a dozen people to climb side by side, yet you find yourself alone, your solitary figure ascending into the dimness above, and there is something deeply meditative about this climb, something that allows your mind to settle and calm, to release the concerns and anxieties of the outside world and focus entirely on the present moment, on the sensation of each step beneath your feet, on the play of light and shadow across the walls, on the gradual transformation of perspective as you rise higher and the entrance hall falls away below. The staircase turns and doubles back on itself, creating a series of landings where you can pause and catch your breath, where you can look back down at the ground floor and appreciate how far you have already come. And with each landing, you notice new details, new elements of decoration and design that reveal the care and attention that went into every aspect of this building's construction. Here, a window looks out over the grounds, and through its ancient glass, wavy and imperfect, you can see the forest you walked through earlier, now just a dark mass against the slightly lighter sky. There, an alcove holds a statue of a figure in robes, holding a book in one hand and pointing toward the heavens with the other, symbolizing the dual nature of true learning, the balance between book knowledge and direct observation, between inherited wisdom and personal discovery. The climb continues, and you find your breathing falling into a steady rhythm, your heartbeat slowing to match the pace of your ascent, and gradually you become aware that you are entering a state of deep calm, a meditative stillness that allows you to perceive things you might otherwise miss, to notice the subtle harmonies of this place, the way every element seems to be part of a larger pattern, a grand design that encompasses everything from the largest architectural features to the smallest decorative details. At the top of the staircase, you emerge into a long corridor that stretches away in both directions, its length seeming to extend far beyond what should be possible given the external dimensions of the building, as if the interior exists in its own geometry, following rules that differ from those of the world outside. The corridor is lined with doors on both sides, each one unique, some made of dark oak bound with iron, others of lighter wood inlaid with patterns of contrasting materials, and still others that appear to be made of materials you cannot quite identify, substances that seem to shift between solid and translucent, between opaque and luminous. Between the doors hang more portraits, but also maps and diagrams, charts of the heavens showing constellations and planetary movements, anatomical drawings of creatures both familiar and strange, mathematical equations that seem to describe the fundamental nature of reality, and here and there mysterious symbols whose meanings are lost to time, but whose power still seems to resonate from the aged parchment on which they were drawn. The ceiling here is lower than in the entrance hall, creating a more intimate atmosphere, and the lighting comes from a series of glass globes suspended at regular intervals, each one containing what appears to be a soft, luminous mist that provides a gentle, steady illumination without the flicker and smoke of candles. The floor is covered with a runner of deep crimson fabric, embroidered with geometric patterns in gold thread, and the walls are paneled in wood that has darkened with age until it is nearly the color of chocolate, its surface polished to a soft sheen that reflects the light from the globes above. As you walk down this corridor, you notice that each door bears a small brass plate, and on each plate is engraved a name or a title, designations that hint at the purpose of the room beyond. Observatory of Celestial Movements, Chamber of Natural Philosophy, Laboratory of Chemical Transformations, Study of Ancient Languages, Repository of Mathematical Theorems, and dozens more, each one representing a different branch of human knowledge, a different approach to understanding the world and our place within it. Discovery of the library. Near the end of the corridor, you come upon a door that is larger than the others, its surface carved with images of books and scrolls, of tablets and manuscripts, all arranged in an intricate pattern that spirals outward from a central point. The brass plate here reads simply Library of Collected Wisdom, and unlike the other doors you have passed, this one stands open, as if waiting specifically for you, as if your entire journey has been leading to this moment, to this threshold. You pause for a moment, feeling the significance of what you are about to do, sensing that to step through this door is to commit yourself to something, to acknowledge a responsibility and accept a sacred trust. For a library is not merely a collection of books, it is a living organism, a repository of human experience and understanding that requires care and respect, that offers its treasures only to those who approach with humility and genuine desire to learn. Taking a deep breath, you step through the doorway and into a space that defies all expectations, that transcends anything you might have imagined in your wildest dreams. The library is vast beyond measure, its shelves rising in tiers that reach toward a ceiling lost in shadows high above, each level connected to those above and below by a complex network of staircases and ladders, catwalks and bridges, creating a three-dimensional maze of wood and metal that seems to extend in all directions simultaneously. The shelves themselves are packed with books. Thousands upon thousands of volumes bound in leather and cloth, their spines displaying titles in dozens of languages and scripts, some familiar, others completely alien, and between the books are scrolls and manuscripts, tablets of clay and stone, even a few objects that seem to be books but are made of materials that do not exist in nature, that must have been created through processes long forgotten. The smell here is overwhelming in the best possible way, that distinctive scent of old paper and leather, of ink and parchment, of knowledge preserved and protected, and underlying it all is a mustiness that speaks of age and permanence, of time measured not in years but in centuries and millennia. EXPLORING, the library's DPTHS. You begin to walk through the library, following the main aisle that runs between the towering shelves, and as you go, you notice that the organization here follows no system you recognize. The books are not arranged alphabetically by author or title, nor are they grouped by subject in any conventional sense. Instead, they seem to be organized according to some deeper principle, some hidden logic that connects them in ways that transcend simple categories. Here, a book on the movements of celestial bodies sits next to a volume on the migration patterns of birds, and beside that is a treatise on the mathematical principles underlying musical harmony, as if whoever arranged these shelves understood that all knowledge is interconnected, that the same patterns and principles that govern the dance of planets around their sun also manifest in the flight of birds and the structure of a symphony. You pause occasionally to examine individual volumes, pulling them carefully from their places and opening them with reverence, running your fingers over pages that might be hundreds of years old, reading passages that speak of discoveries made by scholars long dead, of theories proposed and tested, of observations recorded with painstaking care, and each time you replace a book and continue on, you feel as though you have touched a part of history. As though you have made contact with minds that lived in different times and different circumstances, but shared the same fundamental curiosity, the same desire to understand. The library is not silent, despite the absence of other people. It has its own sounds, the creak of old wood settling, the whisper of air moving through the vast space, the soft rustle of pages turning in invisible drafts, and occasionally, faint and distant, what might be footsteps or voices, though you can never quite locate their source, as if the library itself is haunted not by ghosts in any conventional sense, but by the echoes of all the people who have walked these aisles before you, whose presence has become part of the fabric of the place. The reading chambers. As you penetrate deeper into the library, you discover that it is not a single open space, but rather a collection of interconnected chambers, each with its own character and atmosphere. Some are small and intimate, with just a few shelves and a comfortable chair beside a lamp, perfect spaces for solitary study and deep contemplation, while others are larger, with tables where multiple readers could work simultaneously, sharing the space while pursuing their individual researches. You enter one of these reading chambers, a round room with shelves lining the curved walls and a circular table in the center, its surface covered with green leather that has been worn smooth by generations of scholars, resting their arms upon it while they read and took notes. The lighting here comes from a chandelier suspended above the table, its candles burning with a steady flame that provides ample illumination without any smoke or flicker, as if the very air here has properties that allow fire to burn more perfectly than in the world outside. You settle into one of the chairs that surround the table, feeling the comfort of worn wood that has been shaped by use until it fits the human form perfectly, and as you sit, you feel a profound sense of peace settle over you, a deep relaxation that seems to permeate every cell of your body, releasing tensions you did not even know you were carrying. The silence here is absolute, the kind of silence that is rare in the modern world, unsullied by the hum of machinery or the distant drone of traffic, and in this silence you become aware of your own breathing, of the steady rhythm of your heartbeat, of the gentle processes of your body continuing their work without conscious direction, and you realize that this is what it means to be truly present, to exist fully in a single moment without the constant pull of past regrets or future anxieties. Ancient texts and forgotten knowledge. On the table before you, someone has left a book, its cover made of leather so old it has become brittle, cracking in places but still holding together, still protecting the pages within. You open it carefully, treating it with the respect that such an ancient artifact deserves, and find that it is written in a script you do not immediately recognize, flowing characters that seem to dance across the page, connected by elegant swirls and flourishes that turn writing into a form of visual art. Yet as you look at these unfamiliar symbols, something remarkable happens. The meaning begins to become clear, not through any intellectual process of translation, but through a more direct form of understanding, as if the book itself is communicating with you beyond the barrier of language, transmitting its knowledge through channels that bypass the usual linguistic processing. The text speaks of the nature of transformation, of how all things in the universe are engaged in a constant process of change, how matter and energy flow through different forms while maintaining some essential continuity, how the patterns we observe at one scale of existence repeat themselves at other scales, from the smallest particles to the largest cosmic structures. The writer describes observations made over a lifetime of study, experiments conducted with primitive equipment but keen insight, conclusions drawn through careful reasoning and tested against repeated observations, and throughout it all there is a sense of wonder, a recognition that however much we learn, however deeply we penetrate into the mysteries of existence, there will always be more to discover, always deeper questions to ask. Always new territories of understanding waiting to be explored. As you read, you lose track of time, minutes flowing into hours without your awareness, and the words on the page seem to come alive, painting pictures in your mind, showing you visions of processes that occur beyond the reach of human senses, revealing patterns that connect seemingly unrelated phenomena into a coherent whole. The WHISPERNG archives. Eventually, you close the ancient book and rise from your chair, feeling both energized and deeply relaxed. As if the act of reading has somehow restored something vital that had been depleted by the demands of ordinary life. You leave the reading chamber and continue your exploration of the library, following narrow passages between towering shelves, climbing spiral staircases that lead to upper galleries, crossing bridges that span vast open spaces where you can look down and see dozens of levels below and dozens more above, all filled with the accumulated knowledge of countless generations. You come to a section where the shelves are made not of wood but of stone, and the volumes they hold are bound in materials that seem almost metallic, their covers embossed with symbols that glow faintly in the dim light. This appears to be a particularly old section of the library, where the most ancient texts are kept, and as you walk along these stone shelves, you become aware of a sound, so faint at first that you think you might be imagining it, a sort of whispering or murmuring, as if the books themselves were speaking in voices too quiet for the human ear to properly distinguish. You stop and listen more carefully, trying to locate the source of this sound, and gradually you realize that it is not coming from any single location, but rather from everywhere simultaneously, as if the entire library is alive with quiet conversation, with the exchange of ideas and information occurring at a level just below the threshold of normal perception. The whispering grows slightly louder as you focus your attention on it, and you begin to pick out individual words and phrases, fragments of sentences in multiple languages, some living and others long dead, speaking of discoveries and theories, of observations and speculations, of questions asked and answers proposed, and you understand that what you are hearing is not supernatural in any conventional sense, but rather a kind of resonance. An acoustic phenomenon created by the unique architecture and contents of this space, where sound waves bounce and reflect in complex patterns, creating harmonics and interference patterns that give rise to these ghostly voices. The astronomical tower. Your wandering eventually brings you to a narrow spiral staircase that winds upward through the heart of one of the library's towers, and you feel drawn to climb it to see where it leads, to discover what lies at its summit. The climb is long and demanding, the steps worn smooth by centuries of use and steep enough that you must take care with each step, but you persevere, driven by curiosity and the sense that something significant awaits you at the top. The staircase passes through several locked doors, but each one opens at your approach, as if recognizing your right to be here, your legitimacy as a seeker of knowledge, and finally, after what feels like hundreds of steps, you emerge into a circular chamber that occupies the entire top floor of the tower. The walls here are made almost entirely of windows, tall panes of glass that offer views in every direction, and through these windows, you can see the night sky in all its glory, stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds cast across black velvet, constellations wheeling slowly overhead in their eternal dance, and there, rising above the eastern horizon, a moon so bright and full that it casts shadows across the chamber floor. The center of the room is dominated by a large telescope, its brass fittings gleaming in the moonlight, its long tube pointed toward a section of sky visible through an opening in the domed ceiling. Around the perimeter of the chamber stand various instruments, astrolabes and orreries, star charts and celestial globes, all the tools that astronomers have used throughout the ages to map the heavens and understand the movements of celestial bodies. You approach the telescope and peer through its eyepiece, and even though you have not adjusted its position or changed its focus, you find yourself looking at a view of such clarity and beauty that it takes your breath away. A cluster of stars so distant that their light has traveled for thousands of years to reach you, tiny points of brilliance that represent entire suns, perhaps with their own families of planets, their own possibilities for life and consciousness. And you feel a profound sense of connection to the cosmos, a recognition that you are not separate from the universe, but rather an integral part of it, that the same atoms that make up your body were forged in the hearts of ancient stars, that you are literally made of stardust, that your existence is woven into the very fabric of spacetime itself. Contemplation under the stars. You step back from the telescope and move to one of the windows, looking out over the grounds far below, seeing the forest rendered in shades of silver and shadow by the moonlight, seeing the river glinting like a ribbon of mercury as it winds through the ravine, and beyond all of this, you can see the distant outlines of mountains, their peaks catching the last light from the sun that set hours ago, glowing faintly against the star-filled sky. Up here, so high above the ground and so far from any other people, you feel a profound solitude that is not loneliness but rather a kind of completeness, a sense that in this moment you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do, and that everything that has happened in your life has led to this point, has prepared you for this experience of connection and understanding. You settle onto a cushioned bench beneath one of the windows and allow your gaze to wander across the stars, picking out patterns and constellations, some familiar from childhood and others that you have learned about more recently. And as you watch, you become aware of the subtle movements of the celestial sphere, the slow rotation that carries the stars from east to west, the patient progress of planets along their appointed paths, the occasional flash of a meteor burning up in the atmosphere far below the stars. All of it following laws that were discovered through patient observation and careful reasoning by scholars who sat in places like this, who dedicated their lives to understanding the cosmos and our place within it. The bench is comfortable, its cushions soft and supportive, and you lean back against the stone wall, feeling its coolness through your clothing, a pleasant contrast to the warmth of the chamber. And as you relax more deeply, your eyelids begin to grow heavy, the events of the day and the long climb up the tower finally catching up with you. But you resist sleep for a while longer, wanting to savor this experience, to hold on to this feeling of peace and connection, knowing that such moments are rare and precious. That the demands of ordinary life will soon reclaim you, but also knowing that having experienced this once, you will carry something of it with you always. A memory of stillness and beauty that you can return to whenever the world becomes too chaotic or overwhelming. The dream within the dream. Without quite realizing when the transition occurs, you find that you have slipped into sleep, or perhaps into some state that is adjacent to sleep, a liminal space where consciousness continues but takes on different qualities, where the boundaries between self and environment become more permeable, where thoughts and perceptions blend into each other in ways that would not be possible in full wakefulness. In this state, you find yourself still in the tower chamber, but it has changed subtly. The moonlight seems brighter, more luminous, and the stars visible through the windows have multiplied until the entire sky is ablaze with light, so many stars that they merge into a continuous glow, a luminous fog that fills the heavens and casts everything in a soft radiance. The telescope at the center of the room begins to move on its own, its tube swiveling slowly as if tracking something across the sky, and you approach it with a sense of curiosity mixed with a dreamlike acceptance of impossibility. And when you look through the eyepiece this time, What you see is not merely an image of distant stars, but a vision of something deeper, more fundamental. You see the fabric of spacetime itself, the quantum foam that underlies all of reality. The constant flux of virtual particles popping into and out of existence, the intricate dance of forces and fields that gives rise to the stable matter we perceive in our everyday experience. And you understand, in that wordless way that comes only in dreams, that everything is connected, that separation is an illusion created by our limited perception, that at the deepest level there is only one thing, one unified field expressing itself in infinite variations. You step back from the telescope and turn to find that you are no longer alone in the chamber. Though you cannot see anyone else clearly, there are presences here, shadows that might be human figures or might be something else entirely. And these presences seem to be showing you things, directing your attention to different aspects of the chamber, and each time you look where they indicate, you see something new, some detail or object that was not there before or that you somehow missed in your earlier exploration. Books that write themselves before your eyes, their pages filling with script in real time, charts and diagrams that shift and rearrange themselves, showing different configurations and relationships, and through it all, you have the sense that you are being taught something, that information is being transferred to you not through words or conventional instruction, but through some more direct method, as if knowledge is simply flowing into your mind from the environment itself. The Hall of Time. The scene shifts and you find yourself no longer in the tower but in a long gallery that you do not remember seeing before. A space where the walls are lined not with shelves of books but with mirrors, hundreds of them, each one different in size and shape and frame. And as you walk down this gallery, you notice that the mirrors do not show your reflection in the normal way. Some show you as you are now, but others show you at different ages, as a child, as an elderly person. In some you appear in clothing from different eras, as if the mirrors are somehow showing not just spatial reflections but temporal ones, images of you from different points in time or perhaps different possible timelines, and you realize that you are walking through what might be called the Hall of Time, a place where past, present, and future coexist, where the linear progression that we normally experience is revealed to be just one way of organizing reality. That time might be more like space than we usually imagine, with all moments existing simultaneously, and our consciousness simply moving through them like a spotlight, illuminating different sections of a vast landscape. Some of the mirrors show scenes that you recognize, memories from your own past rendered with perfect clarity, moments you had forgotten but that are still preserved somewhere in the architecture of your mind, while others show possibilities, futures that might come to pass or might never happen, depending on choices you have yet to make, and the effect is simultaneously disorienting and profoundly illuminating, as if you are being given a glimpse of the true nature of existence. The way things actually are when stripped of the filters and limitations of ordinary perception. You pause before one mirror that shows you sitting in the tower chamber where you fell asleep, and you realize with a start that this is happening right now, that some part of you is still there, still sleeping on that bench beneath the window, and that everything you are experiencing is taking place in the space of a few moments of dream time, compressed and expanded in the way that only dreams can manage. And this realization does not disturb you, but rather fills you with a sense of wonder at the capacities of consciousness, at the ability of the mind to create entire worlds in the space between heartbeats. The Garden of Elements. The gallery of mirrors leads eventually to a doorway, and when you pass through it, you find yourself stepping not into another interior space but into a garden, though this garden exists impossibly inside the building, or perhaps the building has somehow expanded to contain it, or perhaps the distinction between inside and outside has ceased to have meaning in this place. The garden is laid out in a circular pattern, divided into 4 quadrants, each representing one of the classical elements that ancient scholars believed made up all matter: earth, water, air, and fire. In the earth quadrant, plants grow with unusual vigor, their leaves deep green and glossy, their roots visible through transparent sections of soil, showing how they draw nutrients and water from the ground, how they anchor themselves and reach ever deeper. And among the plants grow crystals, formations of quartz and amethyst that catch the light and throw rainbow reflections across the soil, demonstrating how even stone grows according to geometric principles. How matter organizes itself into patterns at every scale. The water quadrant features a series of pools and fountains, the water flowing in complex paths that demonstrate principles of fluid dynamics, creating whirlpools and standing waves, laminar flows and turbulent cascades, and in the pools swim fish that seem to glow from within, bioluminescent creatures that trace patterns of light through the dark water, and you understand that water is not merely a substance but a medium for life, a solvent in which the chemistry of existence can occur. A link between the simplicity of individual molecules and the complexity of living systems. In the air quadrant, you find a space open to the sky above, where wind chimes of various sizes hang from invisible supports, creating harmonies as air flows through them, and birds circle overhead, their flight paths tracing equations that describe lift and drag, thrust and gravity, all the forces that make flight possible, and you watch as they soar and dive, as they ride thermals and carve through the air with a grace that comes from millions of years of evolutionary refinement. From countless generations of birds, learning through survival which movements work and which do not. The fire quadrant glows with contained flames, carefully managed fires that burn in special vessels, showing the different colors that various elements produce when heated, the yellows and oranges of carbon compounds, the brilliant whites of burning magnesium, the deep reds and blues and greens of metal salts, and you understand fire not as destruction but as transformation, as the rapid oxidation that releases energy stored in chemical bonds. As light and heat that have been locked away and are suddenly set free, and you see how fire has been essential to human development, how it gave our ancestors the ability to transform their environment, to cook food and shape metals, to push back the darkness and the cold. The center point. At the heart of the garden where the four quadrants meet, stands a simple fountain, its base made of stone carved with intricate patterns, its water rising from a central jet and falling back into a circular basin, and the sound it makes is perfectly tuned, creating a note that resonates with something deep inside you, a frequency that seems to align with your own internal rhythms, and you move toward it, drawn by this resonance, and when you reach the fountain's edge. You look into the water and see not your reflection but something else. You see the building itself from above, as if you were a bird flying high overhead, and you can see how it all fits together, how each part relates to every other part. How the library and the tower and the garden and all the countless rooms and corridors form a unified whole, a structure that embodies principles of organization and relationship, that demonstrates through its very architecture how knowledge is not a collection of isolated facts, but an interconnected web where everything relates to everything else, where understanding one thing helps you understand others. Where the boundaries between disciplines are artificial constructs that we impose for convenience, but that do not reflect the deeper unity of all knowledge. As you watch this aerial view in the water, you see people moving through the building, tiny figures that must represent other seekers who have come here across the centuries, and you realize that you are part of a long tradition, a continuous lineage of curiosity and wonder that stretches back to the earliest humans who looked up at the stars and wondered what they were, who saw patterns in nature and tried to understand them, who asked questions and sought answers, who refused to accept ignorance as a permanent condition, and instead believed that through observation and reason and careful thought, the mysteries of existence could be penetrated, that understanding was possible. The water in the fountain continues its endless cycle, rising and falling, and you understand that this too is a lesson, that everything in the universe participates in cycles, that matter and energy are never truly created or destroyed but only transformed, moving through different states and configurations while maintaining some essential continuity, and that you yourself are part of these cycles, made of elements that were forged in stars and will eventually return to the cosmic cycle, to be incorporated into new forms, new beings, new expressions of the universe's creativity. The awakening. Gradually, gently, you become aware that the dream is beginning to dissolve, that consciousness is returning to your sleeping body in the tower chamber, and there is no jarring transition, no sudden shock of waking, but rather a slow, smooth glide back toward ordinary awareness. And as you come back to yourself, you find that you are carrying something from the dream, not specific information that you could write down or explain to others, but rather a feeling, a sense of connection and understanding. A deep knowing that lives below the level of words, and you open your eyes to find that you are indeed still on the bench in the tower, that the moon has moved across the sky and now hangs low in the west, that the stars have wheeled through their nightly rotation, and you realize that you have slept for several hours, but you feel remarkably refreshed, more rested than you can remember feeling in years, as if that sleep contained more restoration than weeks of ordinary rest. As if something has been healed or rebalanced during your time in this place. You stand and stretch, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles that have been still for too long, and you move to the window to look out once more at the landscape below, now transformed by the approach of dawn, the eastern sky beginning to lighten with the first hints of the coming day, a gradual transition from the deep indigo of night to the softer blues and purples that precede sunrise, and you watch as the stars begin to fade. Not disappearing all at once but slowly yielding their prominence to the growing light, and there is something poignant about this, about the way the night must give way to day, the way one state of being must transition into another, and you understand that this too is part of the great cycle, that light and darkness are partners in a dance that has continued since the beginning of time, and will continue long after you and everyone you know have returned to dust. The descent and reflection. You turn away from the window and begin the long descent down the spiral staircase, moving more carefully now than you did when climbing, aware that going down requires different muscles and different balance, that gravity which aided your climb now makes the descent more treacherous, and you take your time, placing each foot with care, using the curved wall to steady yourself, and as you descend, you think about everything you have experienced during this night, the library with its countless volumes, the reading chamber with its ancient text, the tower with its view of the stars, the dream garden with its 4 elements, and you realize that all of these experiences were teaching you something, not in the direct way that a lecture or textbook teaches, but in the deeper way that experience teaches, by showing you things and allowing you to draw your own conclusions, by presenting patterns and trusting your mind to recognize their significance, and you feel grateful for this opportunity. For the chance to have spent time in this extraordinary place, to have touched however briefly the accumulated wisdom of centuries, to have glimpsed the interconnectedness of all knowledge and the fundamental unity that underlies the apparent diversity of phenomena. The staircase eventually brings you back to the library proper, and you find yourself once again among the towering shelves, the narrow aisles between them stretching away in every direction, and you notice things that you missed during your earlier exploration, small details that now seem significant, the way certain books seem to cluster together, as if engaged in conversation, the way the organization of the shelves creates pathways that led you naturally from one subject to another. From astronomy to mathematics to music to biology, each transition feeling inevitable and right, as if the person who arranged these books understood something profound about the relationships between different forms of knowledge, about how studying one thing can illuminate others, about how the compartmentalization we usually impose on learning is artificial and limiting, that the universe itself recognizes no such boundaries. That physics shades into chemistry, which merges into biology, which connects to psychology, which links back to physics in an endless web of mutual influence and interdependence. The manuscript room. Your wandering brings you to a room you did not notice before, or perhaps it was not there before, or perhaps it has always been there but was waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And in any case, you find yourself standing at the entrance to a chamber that is smaller than the main library but no less impressive, its walls lined with cases containing not books but manuscripts, individual documents preserved behind glass, some written on parchment or vellum, others on paper of various types and ages, still others carved into wood or inscribed on metal tablets, and each one represents someone's attempt to capture knowledge, to preserve understanding for future generations, to leave a record of what they discovered or thought or believed. You move slowly through this room, examining the manuscripts one by one, seeing the evolution of writing styles and materials, seeing how the very act of recording information has changed over the centuries, from pictographic systems to phonetic alphabets, from laboriously hand-copied texts to mechanically printed pages, and you understand that each advance in technology has made knowledge more accessible, has allowed more people to participate in the great conversation that is human learning, has democratized what was once the privilege of a small elite, and this process continues even now, accelerating with each new development, each new tool that makes it easier to create and share and access information. Some of the manuscripts are illuminated with elaborate decorations, their margins filled with intricate designs, their initial letters expanded into complex works of art that incorporate images of plants and animals, geometric patterns and mythological creatures, and you marvel at the skill and patience required to create these embellishments, at the way the scribes who made them transformed the practical task of copying text into an opportunity for artistic expression, elevating the work of preservation into something beautiful as well as useful, demonstrating that utility and aesthetics need not be separate concerns, that the most effective tools and artifacts are often those that please the eye as well as serving their function. One manuscript in particular catches your attention, a volume that appears to be a compendium of natural observations, filled with drawings of plants and animals, rendered with extraordinary accuracy and detail, each one labeled with names in multiple languages, accompanied by notes describing where the specimen was found, what time of year it appeared, what behaviors were observed. And you realize that you are looking at the life work of someone who dedicated themselves to understanding the natural world, who spent years traveling and observing and recording, who believed that every creature and every plant had value and deserved to be documented, to be known, and you feel a connection across time to this unknown naturalist, a sense of kinship with someone who shared your curiosity about the world, your desire to understand how things work and why they are the way they are. The Hall of Innovation. Beyond the manuscript room, you discover yet another chamber, this one filled not with books or documents but with objects, with actual physical artifacts that represent human ingenuity and invention, and you find yourself in what might be called a museum of innovation, where the tools and devices that have advanced knowledge are preserved and displayed, and you move among them with a sense of reverence, understanding that each object here represents a breakthrough. A moment when someone saw a problem differently, when creativity and knowledge combined to produce something new, something that changed what was possible. Here is an astrolabe, its brass surfaces covered with intricate markings, its movable parts designed to calculate the positions of celestial bodies, to determine time and latitude, a portable calculator that made navigation possible, that allowed humans to cross vast oceans with some confidence that they could find their way, and you pick it up carefully, feeling its weight, admiring the precision of its construction, the way each part fits perfectly with the others. And you think about the person who designed this, who understood both the mathematics of celestial movement and the practical challenges of creating a device that could withstand the harsh conditions of sea travel, who had to solve problems of metallurgy and machining, as well as theoretical problems of astronomy and geometry. There is a microscope, an early model with brass fittings and ground glass lenses, and beside it are drawings made by someone who used such an instrument to peer into the microscopic world, who discovered that what appears smooth and uniform to the naked eye is actually composed of distinct structures, of cells and fibers and crystals, who revealed an entire universe of form and activity existing at scales too small for unaided vision, who expanded human awareness to encompass realms that previous generations never suspected existed. And you look through this microscope at a prepared slide, seeing the cell walls of a plant sample, the intricate geometry of their arrangement, and you feel that same thrill of discovery that the first microscopists must have felt, that sense of pulling back a veil and seeing something hidden, something real and important that has always been there but was invisible until the right tool was invented. There are clocks and compasses, scales and measuring instruments of various kinds, each one representing an advance in precision, in the ability to quantify and compare, to move from vague impressions to exact measurements. And you understand that this precision has been essential to the development of knowledge, that the transition from qualitative to quantitative description was a crucial step in the scientific revolution, that being able to measure things accurately allowed patterns to be discovered, relationships to be expressed mathematically, predictions to be tested against observation, and that this process continues, with ever more precise instruments revealing ever finer details, pushing back the boundaries of what can be measured, and therefore what can be understood. The Chamber of Natural Wonders. Adjacent to the Hall of Innovation, you find a room dedicated to natural wonders, a collection of specimens and samples that display the extraordinary diversity of life and the remarkable properties of matter, and you enter this space with a sense of anticipation, knowing that you are about to encounter things that will surprise and delight you, that will remind you of how strange and wonderful the world actually is beneath its familiar surface. The walls are lined with cabinets containing drawers and shelves, and each drawer you open reveals new marvels, minerals that glow with their own light, phosphorescent compounds that absorb energy and release it slowly as luminescence, crystals that have grown into impossible geometries, demonstrating how molecules can self-organize into structures of stunning symmetry and beauty. Fossils that preserve the forms of creatures that lived millions of years ago, that show how life has changed and adapted over unimaginable spans of time, how species arise and flourish and sometimes disappear, replaced by new forms that exploit new possibilities or adapt to changing conditions. There are samples of wood from trees that lived for thousands of years, their growth rings recording the climate history of centuries, showing wet years and dry years, warm periods and cold, and you realize that these trees were living chronicles, that their very substance encoded information about the past, and that by learning to read this information, humans have been able to reconstruct environmental conditions from times long before written records began. There are seeds preserved in amber, trapped in fossilized resin tens of millions of years ago, perfectly preserved as if they were collected yesterday, and you marvel at how this accident of geology has given us a window into ancient ecosystems, has allowed us to see what plants grew in forests that no longer exist, in climates very different from any that exist today. There are samples of rock from the deepest mines and the highest mountains, from volcanic vents and from the abyssal depths of the ocean, each one telling a story about the forces that shape the planet, about the slow but inexorable movements of continents, the rise and erosion of mountains, the opening and closing of ocean basins, about the planet as a dynamic system that is constantly changing, constantly rearranging itself according to physical laws that we have only begun to understand in the last few centuries, and you feel a profound appreciation for the complexity of the Earth, for the interwoven systems of geology and atmosphere and ocean and biosphere that make this planet suitable for life, that maintain the conditions within the narrow range that allows water to exist in liquid form, that keep temperatures moderate enough for complex chemistry to occur, but not so hot that molecules break down. The Gallery of Human Achievement. Moving on, you enter a long gallery whose walls are covered with images and artifacts that chronicle human achievement across various fields of endeavor, not in a triumphalist way that ignores costs and failures, but in a spirit of honest appreciation for what humans have managed to accomplish through cooperation and creativity, through the gradual accumulation of knowledge and the willingness to build on what previous generations discovered, and you walk slowly through this gallery. Taking time to examine each display, to read the accompanying descriptions, to understand the context and significance of what you are seeing. Here are mathematical manuscripts showing the development of calculus, the system that allows us to describe change and motion with precision, that provides the language for expressing the laws of physics, and you see how this development was not the work of a single person, but rather the culmination of insights from many mathematicians working over decades, each contributing a piece to the puzzle, each building on the work of those who came before. Until finally the system crystallized into the form we recognize today, and you understand that this is how most advances in knowledge actually happen, not through individual flashes of genius, but through collaborative effort, through the patient work of communities of scholars, sharing ideas and critiquing each other's work, and gradually refining understanding. There are charts showing the exploration of the world, maps from different eras that reveal how human knowledge of geography expanded, how the blank spaces on early maps were gradually filled in as explorers ventured into unknown regions and returned with descriptions and measurements, how errors were corrected and details were added, how the map of the world became increasingly accurate and complete, and you think about the courage required for those early journeys. When travelers had no idea what they might encounter, when they risked their lives to satisfy curiosity and to expand the boundaries of the known world, and you feel grateful for their efforts, for the knowledge they brought back, for the connections they established between different parts of the world. There are images depicting advances in medicine, showing how understanding of the human body has deepened over time, how treatments have become more effective as knowledge of anatomy and physiology has increased, how diseases that once were death sentences can now be cured or managed, how human lifespan has increased dramatically in just a few centuries, and you recognize that this represents countless hours of research and experimentation, of careful observation and testing, of failures and setbacks and gradual progress, and you feel both gratitude for those who did this work and responsibility to continue it, to build on what they achieved, to push forward the boundaries of medical knowledge, so that future generations will benefit just as you have benefited from the work of past generations. The quiet contemplation space. Your long journey through the various rooms and chambers of this vast building has been enriching but also tiring, and you feel the need for a period of quiet rest, of integration, a time to simply sit and allow everything you have seen and experienced to settle into your consciousness, to be processed and absorbed, and as if responding to this unspoken need, you come upon a small room that appears designed exactly for this purpose, a space of absolute simplicity and tranquility. Containing nothing but a few cushions arranged on the floor, and a window that looks out onto an interior courtyard where a single tree grows, its branches spreading wide, its leaves rustling gently in a breeze you cannot feel from inside, and you enter this room and settle onto one of the cushions, adjusting your position until you are comfortable, and then you simply sit, watching the tree through the window, following the movement of its branches, the play of light and shadow on its leaves. And gradually your mind becomes quiet, the constant stream of thoughts that normally occupies consciousness begins to slow and thin out, and you enter a state of simple presence, of being without doing, of awareness without the need to analyze or categorize or judge. And in this state, you begin to notice things you normally miss, the quality of the light filling the room, the texture of the cushion beneath you, the subtle sounds that make up what you usually think of as silence. The whisper of air moving through the building, the distant creak of wood expanding and contracting with temperature changes, your own breathing and heartbeat, and you realize that silence is not the absence of sound, but rather a quality of attention, a way of listening that allows you to hear what is actually there rather than being lost in your own mental noise. The tree in the courtyard seems to become more vivid as you watch it, its colors more saturated, its movements more graceful, and you understand that attention itself transforms experience, that when you really look at something, really give it your full awareness, it reveals qualities and dimensions that are invisible to casual observation, and you think about how much of life you normally experience in this casual way. How much you miss because your attention is divided or captured by habitual patterns of thought. And you resolve to bring this quality of attention into your everyday life, to practice seeing things as they actually are rather than as you assume them to be, to cultivate the same careful observation that the scholars and naturalists whose work you have seen tonight brought to their studies. The return journey begins. After what might be minutes or might be an hour, you feel ready to move again, and you rise from the cushion, feeling both relaxed and energized, and you leave the quiet contemplation space and begin to make your way back toward the entrance of the building, retracing your steps through the library, past the towering shelves with their countless volumes, through the reading chambers where scholars have worked for generations, along the corridors with their portraits and diagrams, and as you walk, you notice that the quality of light has changed, that dawn has definitely arrived, that sunlight is now streaming through the windows, transforming everything it touches, making the dust motes that float in the air visible as tiny points of light, illuminating the details of carvings and decorations that were invisible in the candlelight of last night, and the building seems to wake up around you, to come alive with the new day, as if it too participates in the cycle of rest and activity, of night and day, of inhalation and exhalation that characterizes all living things. You pass other people now, early risers who are beginning their day of study and research, and you exchange nods and quiet greetings with them, feeling a sense of fellowship, of shared purpose, recognizing that you are all part of the same endeavor, all engaged in the pursuit of knowledge and understanding, all contributing in your own ways to the collective human project of making sense of existence. And there is something comforting about this recognition, about knowing that you are not alone, that others share your questions and your curiosity, that the work of learning and discovery is a communal effort that connects you to people across time and space, to those who came before and those who will come after. All of you links in a chain that extends backward to the first humans who wondered about the world and forward to future generations who will build on what we discover today. Descending the grand staircase. You reach the grand staircase and begin your descent, and now in the morning light, you can see details that were hidden in shadow last night, the intricate carvings on the banister, the patterns in the stone floor far below, the way the light streams through the high windows and creates pools of brightness and zones of shadow, and each step downward brings you closer to the entrance hall, closer to the threshold between this special place and the ordinary world outside, and you feel a mixture of emotions. Sadness at leaving this sanctuary of knowledge, gratitude for the experiences you have had here, and a quiet determination to carry something of this place with you, to maintain the sense of wonder and curiosity that has been rekindled during your visit, to remember that the pursuit of understanding is not something separate from life, but rather is life at its fullest and most meaningful, that to be truly human is to ask questions and seek answers, to observe and learn and grow, to participate consciously in the great unfolding of existence, rather than simply being carried along by circumstances and habit. The entrance hall is busier now than it was last night, with people coming and going, some arriving for a day of study, others leaving after spending the night here, and you move through this activity with a sense of calm detachment, aware of the bustle around you but not caught up in it, maintaining the inner quiet that you cultivated in the contemplation room, and you realize that this is possible, that you can carry stillness within you even in the midst of activity. That peace is not a function of external circumstances, but rather a quality of consciousness that you can choose to cultivate regardless of what is happening around you. You reach the massive wooden doors at the entrance, and they stand open now, admitting the morning air and the sounds of birds singing in the trees outside, and you pause for a moment on the threshold, looking back into the entrance hall one last time, imprinting the image in your memory, wanting to be able to recall this place and what it represents, and then you turn and step through the doorway, out onto the bridge that spans the ravine, and you feel the cool morning air on your face. Smell the scent of dew on grass and leaves, hear the rush of the river far below, and all of your senses seem heightened, as if your night in the library has somehow cleaned the windows of perception, allowing you to experience the world more directly and vividly than usual. The path through the forest. You cross the bridge and enter the forest, following the same path that brought you here last night, but everything looks different in the daylight. The trees that seemed mysterious and slightly ominous in the darkness are now simply trees, beautiful and ordinary, their leaves catching the morning sunlight and glowing various shades of green, and you can see the details of bark and branch, can notice the small movements of insects and birds, can appreciate the complex ecosystem that exists in even a small patch of forest, the countless organisms interacting in relationships of competition and cooperation, of predation and symbiosis, all of it governed by evolutionary processes that have shaped life over billions of years, producing this rich tapestry of forms and behaviors that we can observe and study and try to understand. As you walk, you think about the cycle you have completed, arriving at dusk and departing at dawn, spending the hours of darkness in exploration and learning, and you recognize that this mirrors a larger pattern, the cycle of life itself, which consists of periods of activity and rest, of engagement and withdrawal, of outer exploration and inner integration, and you understand that both are necessary. That a life of constant activity without time for reflection and assimilation would be exhausting and ultimately meaningless, just as a life of constant withdrawal without engagement with the world would be sterile and disconnected, and that the key is to find a balance, to honor both the need for action and the need for stillness, to move between them in a rhythm that feels natural and sustainable. The path begins to slope downward now, leading you away from the building on its height and back toward the lower elevations where everyday life is conducted. And with each step, you feel yourself transitioning back into your ordinary identity, taking up again the responsibilities and concerns that you left behind when you began this journey, but you find that they seem lighter now, less oppressive, as if the perspective you gained during your visit to the library has somehow changed your relationship to them. Has reminded you that they are just one aspect of existence, important certainly, but not the whole story, and that there is always a larger context, a bigger picture that includes but transcends the immediate demands and pressures of daily life. Emergence into the wider world. The forest thins out and you emerge into open country, rolling hills covered with grass that waves in the morning breeze, and in the distance you can see signs of human habitation, buildings and roads, the structures and infrastructure of ordinary life, and you walk toward them, feeling yourself becoming more firmly grounded in consensus reality, the dreamlike quality of the night fading but not disappearing completely. Leaving behind a residue of wonder and possibility that colors your perception, that makes even familiar things seem slightly new and fresh, as if you are seeing them for the first time, or as if you have been given new eyes with which to look at the world. You think about the ancient text you read, with its discussion of transformation and change, of how all things flow through different forms while maintaining some essential continuity, and you realize that this applies not just to matter and energy, but also to consciousness, to the self, that you are constantly changing, constantly being transformed by your experiences, and that the person walking down this hillside is not quite the same person who climbed toward the library last evening. That something has shifted, some new understanding has been integrated, some dormant potential has been activated, and while you cannot yet articulate exactly what has changed, you know that the change is real and that it will continue to unfold over the coming days and weeks and months, revealing its full significance gradually as you reflect on what you experienced and as you apply the insights gained during your visit to the challenges and opportunities of your daily life. The morning is beautiful, the kind of morning that makes you glad to be alive, when the air is fresh and clean. When the light has that special quality that only exists in the early hours, when everything seems possible and the day stretches ahead full of potential, and you walk with a spring in your step, feeling energized despite your lack of sleep, as if the experiences of the night have fed something deeper than the body, have nourished your spirit in ways that are more sustaining than mere physical rest, and you realize that this is one of the great secrets of life, that we are not just physical beings with physical needs, but multidimensional creatures who require nourishment on many levels, who need beauty and meaning and connection as much as we need food and water and shelter, and that a life lived without attention to these deeper needs, no matter how physically comfortable, will always feel somehow incomplete, somehow unsatisfying. Integration and understanding. As you continue your journey home, you begin to understand that the library you visited was not just a building, not just a collection of books and artifacts, but a symbol, a representation of something larger, of the human capacity for learning and growth, of the collective wisdom that humanity has accumulated over millennia, of the understanding that has been hard-won through countless hours of observation and experimentation, of trial and error, of brilliant insights and frustrating dead ends. And you realize that this wisdom is not locked away in any physical location, but is actually accessible to anyone who approaches it with genuine curiosity and respect, that the books and manuscripts you saw are just one way of preserving and transmitting knowledge, that there are many other ways, including direct experience and contemplation, including the study of nature itself, which is the ultimate teacher, the original book from which all others are derived. And you feel a renewed commitment to learning, not in the narrow sense of accumulating credentials or mastering specific subjects, but in the broad sense of remaining open to experience, of cultivating awareness, of paying attention to what the world is trying to teach you through every encounter and every moment. The hills gradually give way to more level terrain, and you find yourself walking through cultivated fields where crops grow in neat rows, where human intention has shaped the landscape to serve human needs, and you think about how this too is a form of knowledge, the agricultural wisdom that allowed humans to transition from hunting and gathering to settled life, to create the surplus that made civilization possible. That freed some people from the constant demands of food production, so they could become specialists, artisans and scholars and artists, and you recognize that every aspect of the world you inhabit is built on layers of accumulated knowledge, that the comfortable modern life most people take for granted is actually the product of countless innovations and discoveries, of problems solved and techniques refined over generations, and that you have a responsibility to honor this inheritance, to appreciate it and to contribute to it in whatever way you can, however small that contribution might be. The threshold of home. You reach the outskirts of your hometown or living area, familiar streets and buildings that you have seen countless times before, but now they seem slightly different, slightly more interesting, as if your experiences of the night have given you new eyes, have taught you to look more carefully, to notice details that you previously overlooked, and you realize that the extraordinary is not separate from the ordinary, but is actually contained within it. That wonder and mystery do not require exotic locations or special circumstances, but are available in every moment if only you know how to look, if only you can maintain the quality of attention that allows you to see beyond the veil of familiarity that usually obscures the remarkable nature of reality. You think about how you will integrate what you learned, how you will apply the insights gained during your night in the library to your everyday life, and you make some resolutions. To set aside time regularly for reading and study, not just of practical matters, but of subjects that stretch your mind and feed your curiosity. To practice the kind of careful observation that the naturalists and scientists demonstrated, to really look at things rather than just glancing at them. To maintain connections with others who share your interest in learning and growth, to participate in the community of seekers rather than trying to pursue understanding in isolation, to approach challenges with the same patient persistence that scholars have always brought to difficult problems, understanding that real learning takes time and that frustration is a normal part of the process. And perhaps most importantly, to remember that the pursuit of knowledge is not separate from the pursuit of wisdom, that information without understanding is sterile, that the goal is not merely to know more but to become more, to develop as a human being in ways that allow you to live more fully and contribute more meaningfully to the world. Return and transformation. You arrive at your home, whatever form that takes, whether it is a house or an apartment, a room in a shared dwelling or some other arrangement, and you pause before entering, taking a moment to acknowledge the completion of your journey, to mark the transition from the extraordinary experience of the night to the ordinary reality of daily life. And as you stand there, you feel a deep sense of gratitude for the opportunity to have had such experiences. Gratitude for the traditions of learning and scholarship that make such places possible. Gratitude for all the people throughout history who have dedicated themselves to the pursuit and preservation of knowledge, who have believed that understanding matters, that truth is worth seeking, that the human mind is capable of penetrating the mysteries of existence if given proper tools and sufficient time, and you carry this gratitude with you as you open the door and step inside. Back into familiar surroundings, back to the routines and responsibilities that structure your days, but carrying within you something new, something precious, the memory of a night spent in communion with the accumulated wisdom of ages, the experience of touching, however briefly, the eternal human quest for understanding, and you know that this memory will sustain you, will remind you during difficult times why learning matters, why curiosity is important, why it is worth making the effort to grow and develop as a conscious being rather than simply drifting through life on autopilot, letting circumstances determine your path instead of consciously choosing your direction based on values and understanding. Closing reflections. As you prepare for sleep now, in your own bed after your night of exploration and discovery, you feel a profound sense of peace, a deep relaxation that comes not from physical exhaustion but from a sense of completion, of having done something meaningful, of having honored the best part of yourself, the part that seeks and questions and wonders, and as your eyes close and consciousness begins to fade, you review the highlights of your journey. The approach through the forest at dusk, the first sight of the great building rising before you, the entrance hall with its soaring ceiling and painted stars, the library with its countless books reaching toward the shadows above, the reading chamber where you encountered ancient wisdom, the tower with its telescope pointed at the stars, the dream of the four elements and the unified nature of all knowledge, the manuscript room and the hall of innovation, the gallery of human achievement and the quiet contemplation space, and all of these images and experiences blend together now, merging into a single impression of wonder and possibility, of connection to something larger than yourself, something that extends backward through time to the first humans who looked at the world and wondered how it works, and forward into a future where new generations will continue the quest, will build on what we discovered. We'll push further into the mysteries that remain unsolved, and you understand that you are part of this great chain, this continuity of conscious exploration, that your curiosity and your efforts to understand, however modest they might seem, are part of the largest and most important project that humanity has ever undertaken, the project of making sense of existence, of transforming chaos into order through the application of reason and observation, of gradually extending the boundaries of the known at the expense of the unknown, and with this understanding warming your heart like a gentle fire, you drift into sleep, a deep and restful sleep free from anxiety or disturbance, a sleep that will restore your energy and prepare you for the coming day. And perhaps in this sleep you will dream again of the library, of its endless shelves and infinite wisdom, of the scholars who have walked its halls and the discoveries that have been made within its walls. And these dreams will weave themselves into the fabric of your consciousness, will become part of who you are, will influence your thoughts and choices in ways both obvious and subtle. And when you wake, you will be ready to engage with the world again, carrying within you the lessons of your journey, the insights gained during your night in that place of accumulated wisdom, ready to apply what you learned to the practical challenges of living. Ready to continue your own personal quest for understanding while also contributing to the collective human project of learning and growth. And in this way, the cycle continues, the eternal rhythm of rest and activity, of withdrawal and engagement, of inner exploration and outer action, the dance of consciousness that defines human existence and gives it meaning and purpose beyond mere survival, beyond the satisfaction of basic needs, reaching towards something higher, something transcendent. The actualization of our potential as beings capable of understanding, capable of wonder, capable of conscious participation in the great unfolding story of the universe becoming aware of itself through us, through our observations and our questions, through our patient accumulation of knowledge and our flashes of insight, through our individual efforts and our collective enterprises, through our failures and our successes, through everything we do in our ongoing attempt to understand what this is. This strange and wonderful experience of being alive and conscious in a vast cosmos full of mysteries. And now, having completed your journey and returned safely home, having touched the eternal through your visit to that place of learning, you can rest, can surrender to sleep knowing that you have lived this day fully, have experienced something profound and meaningful, have added your small contribution to the great human project, and that tomorrow will bring new opportunities, new challenges. New chances to learn and grow and understand, but for now, this moment, there is only sleep, deep and peaceful and restorative, and the quiet satisfaction of a journey completed, a quest fulfilled, a promise kept to your own deepest self.